Welcome to the Speaking Podcast. You can find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com. We're also on BitChute and YouTube. You'll find the links in the podcast description. I'm also a podcasting coach. I've got 4 other podcasts. You'll find everything on bio.link/podcaster. My guest today is a voice empowerment coach in the UK. Please welcome Emma Wainer.
Hi, Roy. Lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you too. So I suppose you might let the listeners know a little more about Emma.
Sure. So, as you said, I'm a vocal empowerment coach, and I work with many clients to help them feel really confident when they stand up to speak. So I've been described as a gravitas wizard before. So many people can stand up to speak and they can speak well, but they feel like they're lacking it in gravitas. So I really help them develop that sense of being in control, of feeling like an expert and sounding like an expert to their audience. And I absolutely love my job.
Fantastic, brilliant. So before we delve into everything that you're doing, and I looked at some of the videos, so I'm looking forward to this conversation, which you might let us know a little about Emma when she was younger, your own speaking journey.
Yeah, sure. So mine was quite an interesting one in that I grew up, if you like, in a startup. I trained as a speech and language therapist many, many moons ago. Loved the work, and I say this very awkwardly, I didn't like working in the NHS. And it's an amazing institution. It just wasn't for me. So I left and I joined a startup, and there were 6 of us and we were running global events. And it was so much fun. It was really, really great fun. But I stayed for 10 years. We grew the organization and there were 30 full-time employees. And so my job changed and I was coaching speakers at events to make sure that their messaging was consistent throughout. And I was like, I love this. This is brilliant. This is really what I want to do. And then I had my kids and I didn't want to keep doing the travel. So I went to Central School of Speech and Drama and I did a voice coaching master's degree. And it was just so much fun. But what was really interesting was I'd gone from being the director of operations, doing all this coaching, feeling super confident, to having a few years at home with my kids. And I really lost my confidence. I really felt like I had nothing to contribute. I lost my voice. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to say. I didn't speak up. And it was only going back and doing that master's degree because I knew I wanted to get back to coaching. And by doing that degree and really putting myself through the ringer, my God, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. I refound my voice and it made me realize you can have a really confident voice, you can lose it and you can get it back. You can also go from a space of never having found your confident voice and find it. The process is just amazing and it works. So whenever I speak to people about it, I always feel like I've got like the inside track because I know what it's like. I know what it's like to sit there in a meeting and want to say something, but not sure how to say it or not feel like you can put your hand up or contribute in any way. So I feel like my journey has been a really, really interesting one because many people do this job, having come from a space of, well, I worked in this company for 20 years or 50 years. I've spoken on every global stage there is and do it like me. And I always kind of sort of sit there and think, that doesn't really work because other people may not have had your experience. So yeah, it's an interesting one, knowing that you can have a voice, lose it, get it back, or not having had a voice, find it, and then really grow from there. So that was my journey.
Brilliant. And you mentioned kind of staying back for the children, because I think that's important as well, because especially in the speaking career, some people, they're traveling in a lot, not in their own country or even internationally. And I know myself as well. I mean, I never wanted to kind of be into paid speaking, but I got a few opportunities in the crypto world and I didn't take them because I knew I would lose the routine of with my child, and my youngest child, he's 9 now. And it's like, that's more important to me. And I think sometimes it's great actually that you can do that, that you can say, no, I know what's more important to me.
Yeah, well, we were in a lucky position. My husband had an amazing job. So that meant that we had the financial freedom to make that choice. But also it was a kind of practicality thing. I worked a long way from where we lived. And I mean, our little one would have to go into childcare and it just financially just didn't work. It didn't make sense. So we were in a very lucky position, and I realized many people aren't, but it did mean I got to choose. But in the choosing of that, I lost something as well. I gained a huge amount and I'm so happy I had that time, but I did lose something of myself in that process. And again, really lucky that I had that opportunity to go and do the master's degree and gain that back and then and then some as well.
And in the master's degree, what exactly did you cover? Because it'd be interesting to see what exactly it entailed.
Yeah, it's really wide-ranging. So obviously quite a lot of it is about coaching and training and teaching. So it's what they would officially call pedagogy. So learning how people learn and learning how to teach. So that's a big chunk of it. But then also looking at basically body, breath, and voice, which is the basis of everything that I teach, with it being and connecting it with business and how business works. But what you are thinking really affects what you do with your body. It affects how you breathe, and that affects how your voice sounds. It also affects the words that you choose. So a lot of the degree was really about learning to reconnect with our bodies, because I don't know if you get this with the people that you work with, or have a sense of it yourself, is like we tend to think that speaking happens here. You know, we have a thought. Sorry, for those that aren't watching the video, I just indicated my head. So we have thoughts in our brains and we speak. And we think that's it, that's speaking, that's communicating. What we actually forget is that everything from the neck down, the rest of your body is communicating a message. And that message may be something you want to send out, or it may not be. So if your body is any way going, oh no, I don't want to be here, or I'm really intimidated by this number of people, or this level of people, then your body might be telling that story to your audience. So the words sound great, but the body is going, get me out of here. So a lot of our degree was about reconnecting with what the story that the body is telling, and making sure that it was relaxed, it was open, it was grounded, all the things that make a really, really good speaker. And then working on breathing, because breath is the power to your voice. So if you're nervous or you're anxious or feeling, in any way, this is a stressful situation, your breathing changes, and that really impacts your voice. So yeah, so a big chunk of our degree was really, really focused on that, learning it ourselves and then learning how to teach it to others as well.
Excellent. And you mentioned, like people afraid, especially in business environments, to speak. And I know, because I was very late to the game. I was kind of my mid-40s before I started joining Toastmasters and getting out of this. But I was running big jobs for the company I was working for, and I used to be terrified of the meetings. Now you'd be sitting around with, say 20, the builder, architects, the client, and my voice just go, and I suppose, because when I think, it's probably the fear of saying something silly, and I used to always it was my worst moment. But I know that when somebody was attacking you in the wrong, when you were blending the wrong or something like that, it's like the fear just dissipated, and you stand, and then you kind of showed your true self. And
Yeah.
I've seen that in a few others as well. But just for those, because a lot of people actually have that same kind of, that will never happen. I mean, I've parked that bus. I wish I could go back and give myself a slap in the head, but it is what it is. but
Well,
but for
maybe not
those,
slap in the head, just accept who you were at that time. That's probably a good start. But yeah, it's incredible. Like I said, but everything you think about yourself will leak out of your body somehow or another. So say you were presenting to that group of people and you knew you were going to come to one part in your presentation. Maybe for some people it's the figures, maybe it was a particular design, or maybe it was part of the project flow. There's always a bit, if some project or other, that we're like, oh, that's the sticky bit for us. Now we're probably thinking, oh God, please don't ask me about those numbers on page 27, or don't ask me about this because I don't think I can explain it. If we are thinking that, it will affect how we stand. It'll affect how we present the information. Maybe we use words that are less direct, less strong. And somebody in the room will pick up on that, and they'll sense the hesitation, and then that's it. They're kind of like, okay, there's a problem here. And then they start digging in, and they're like, they want to know what's going on. And then we sort of reiterate to ourselves, so this becomes a story. It's like, see, I knew I wouldn't be able to do that bit, and they asked me that question. What we don't realize is actually we initiated that question by how we spoke at that particular point in the presentation. So yeah, it's what we're thinking about ourselves, whether we're cheerleading ourselves or whether we're allowing the inner critic to drive the bus, which is what happens for so many people. The inner critic is driving the bus going, what are you doing? Sit down, you're going to sound like an idiot. And of course, then we trip ourselves up because we've got all this noise going on in our head. So then it becomes really difficult to be present to the people that we're talking to, watch what's going on with their faces, and allow ourselves to adapt to the minute, to the moment, to what they need there and then. Does that make sense?
Perfect. Yeah. Brilliant. Brilliant. And with those then that are kind of going to go on stage and they're just terrified, what kind of tips would you give people for, the anxiety to get to kind of park it a bit?
Yeah, there's a couple of things here. So one of the things we do, in fact, I was doing this morning with a client who's got to do a very important speech, is visualization. So sports people use it all the time. Really massive business owners use this all the time. The reason they do it is biological. So our brains cannot tell the difference between an imagined memory, I'm going to say, and a memory. So if we visualize something, our brain just accepts that as a memory. So if I'm about to go and do a big speech and maybe I've got 5,000 people in the audience and this is the first time I've spoken to that many people, I need to spend a bit of time using my brain to imagine what it's going to be like stepping out on that stage, feeling the heat of the lights, knowing what it's going to feel like to have the microphone on my shirt, looking up because they're going to be raked, and seeing all those people and all those faces and feeling the energy of that many people in one room. I need to spend some time thinking about that. So what is it going to look like? Then I need to spend some time thinking about what is it going to feel like in my body? How is it going to feel to put my first foot on the stage, and then my second, and then my third, and then standing and facing the audience? And then I'm going to think about smiling at the audience and just seeing them, acknowledging them, and letting them see me. So if I can visualize all of that, my brain goes, oh yeah, you've done this before. And I do it so many times that when I actually walk out, the brain goes, oh yeah, we do this. This is a thing we do. We're fine. And in that process, what doesn't happen is that adrenaline starts kicking in and that anxiety starts kicking in, because when we're nervous, when we're anxious, that's when our stress hormones start to be released. So adrenaline, cortisol, and I've forgotten the third stress hormone. Adrenaline, cortisol, can't think of it. And then that affects how we breathe. So if we're standing on that stage and we're going, and we're breathing in a really shallow way because we're becoming anxious, our audience pick up on that. And then they start to go, oh dear. And then they're worried for us. And then that sets up a cycle between us and the audience that elevates that anxiety. So anything we can do to visualize, to get the breathing normal and low in the body, is going to help anybody who feels anxious. And then the final thing I would always say to people is know exactly what's coming out of your mouth for the first 2 sentences. Like, just practice it and practice it and practice it and practice it. So you open your mouth, you say the first 2 sentences, and then you're like, oh, I'm going, fine. I know where I'm going from here. But if you're not sure what you're going to say when you open your mouth, you'll have, okay, so any of those hesitant words, and then the audience is like, oh, okay, it's going to be like that, is it? And we don't want to do that, because they will remember the first and the last things that you do. So that first bit's got to be brilliant.
Fantastic. And what about kind of pre-stage warm-up? Because, some people, they're doing heavy breathing, other people are jumping up and down. Even Tony Robbins clapping, and I know he damaged his hands from clapping his hands too hard. So I just wondering what you'd actually kind of be advising people to do.
It really depends on your personality. So for some people, one of the ways to get rid of adrenaline, so adrenaline is normal, right? You're going into a situation where, there's a heightened, risk reward, right? So there will be a bit more adrenaline in your body. When we get too much adrenaline, we start to get shaky. So if you're the kind of person who gets a little bit of too much adrenaline and you get a bit shaky, doing something really physical can help. So running up and down a few flights of stairs, putting on your, pop guilt music in your headphones and doing a silly kind of dance around is really useful for getting rid of that excess adrenaline. Now, if that feels too physical, you can do things like literally shaking your hands. So you flick your hands, flick your arms, flick your legs. It does the same thing. It gets rid of the excess adrenaline. So for some people, that's really, really helpful. For other people, that kind of physical activity is not what they want to do, and it makes them feel more anxious. So for other people, I would recommend deep breathing. So anything we can do to lower the breath in the body, get it away from the upper chest and down into what we call diaphragmatic or belly breathing, that is going to make people feel so much calmer, because you cannot be anxious and breathe deeply. And the breathing deeply will override the anxiety. So the body goes back to, it's like equilibrium. It's like system normal. Everything is fine. So anything they can do to breathe deeply. So one of the things I say to people is, if you are feeling a bit anxious, don't try and breathe in. Because if you breathe in, it's like trying to fill a balloon that's already full of air. So, if you're feeling anxious, your whole chest and torso will be tight. So if you try and breathe in when it's already tight, you make it tighter. So actually what you need to do is breathe out. So I always say to people, if in doubt, breathe out. That way the body kind of resets and goes, oh, okay, yeah, this is what normal feels like. And then you can breathe in naturally and then do a breathing exercise from there. So first of all, breathe out. Yeah. So either take the physical route, if that's how you feel, or take the deep breathing route for sure.
Okay, brilliant. And I know that you help TEDx speakers as well. And I believe that one of them is after landing a TED just to get on the TED stage. But you might just kind of talk about kind of advice that you're giving to the people that are actually going through it, because obviously you've spotted different mistakes people make over the years.
I love working with people on their TED speeches. It's just my current TED group are an amazing group of women, unbelievable. I mean, phenomenal. We laugh, we cry every week. It's like therapy. It's incredible. I think one of the major mistakes that people make, and in fact, this happened with the lady that is now going to go on to do a TED, or has been picked up by TED. Her video is gone viral on TED. When she arrived, she had some of her script already written, and it was beautifully crafted, and it was amazing information, and she was utterly missing from it. So we could have taken that speech and we could have given it to any other woman in a similar industry and had her read it. So for a TED speech to really work, to really resonate with your audience, you have to be in it. You have to be really present. So it has to be part of your story. So when I do my TEDx, part of my story is that when I was at home, when I was with my kids, I had 5 miscarriages. So I had my first son, and then I had 5 subsequent miscarriages. And that actually really impacted on my sense of enoughness. And it also was a contributing factor to me losing my voice. So I didn't feel like I was enough of a woman, right? I couldn't do the one thing that women are designed to do. And that really became a mantra, an internal mantra. So when I do my speech, I talk about all the areas in life where women can end up feeling like they're not enough. And then I come back to how that impacts on how we speak and how we work through life, how we build our businesses, or how we build a career through a corporate life. So it's very important that we're in the speech. Now, if that bit wasn't in the speech, my audience wouldn't understand that I understand what it's like to not feel enough. And I lost my voice and I found it back. So there's a really nice narrative arc they can follow. So I would say the number one mistake that I see people making when they come to think about writing a TED is they keep it too academic, or they keep it too factual. You have to be in there. There's got to be an emotional connection between you, the content, and the audience. Otherwise, it doesn't work. I think the second big mistake I see people making is that they write to read, not write for the ear. So if you own a business, if you work in a business, you're used to writing all the time. You write proposals, you write projects. If you own your own business, you're writing social content the entire time. You write for it to be read. And there's a particular way that you do that. When you're delivering a TED talk, you are writing for somebody's ear, which means you have to change entirely the way you write. Not the style, not your personality, but the way that the words are put down on the paper. And you have to think about how you need to build, how you need to encourage people to come along on the story with you, and where you're going. But I would say the second big mistake is people write for reading, not for listening. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And
yeah,
I just, because there's been a lot of the guests that come on the show that have done TEDx, and I'm always asking them about, how they landed it and their preparation. And I've got so many different kind of responses. And the guy mentioned that nearly 1,000 times they practiced it, because some people practice it to a T. And then there's others, they say a few times. And one person, because they done 2, and they said the first time they over practiced it. And the second one, they kind of done it in flow, and they felt that the second one but more in line with what you had said earlier. Know exactly what you're going to say at the start and the end, but it was never kind of, and they felt that was 10 times better. And I'm just curious what you're kind of, is it something you leave up to the people themselves or what you're recommending?
If you're doing a TEDx, like a proper TEDx, and it's being filmed, they need to know exactly how long it's going to be. You need to know exactly how long it's going to be, because you'll have a specific time slot. So I would say you need to have it scripted and you need to learn it. Now, what was really interesting about the example you gave there of the guy doing it the second time around and doing it in flow, the reason he could do it the second time around was because he practiced really hard the first time around. You have got to be an incredibly practiced, proficient, present speaker to be able to get your way through a TEDx style speech perfectly. Not perfectly, because perfect's a really bad word when it comes to speaking, but with real presence and personality. So it's much better to have it scripted, to learn it, and then nuance it later, right? Just like if anybody plays an instrument, right? The first few times you play a new piece, you're going to be clunky. You're going to hit the wrong notes. It's going to be a bit awkward. You're going to get the rhythm is going to be wrong. Like, then you practice it. You do it 10, 20, 30, 50 times until you can do it without thinking about it. And then that's the point when it becomes music, it becomes art, because then you can start to interpret it. You can make it your own piece of music. And I really feel that TEDx's are the same. It's like, you've got to have the structure, you've got to do it right. You then have to practice it. Then once you've done it many, many times, then you can start to really put your own personality and make it a piece of art. And that's when it's really engaging. That's when people are going to come back and watch it again and again and again and get new stuff every time they do. So I guess it depends on your personality. I guess it depends on the seriousness of the scenario. But I would always say practice first, get it right first, and then allow yourself to play with it. Because if you're playing with it from the beginning, it kind of never has time to mature and solidify. Yeah, that would be my advice.
Yeah. No, I think it's kind of like I'm not sure if have you gone to Toastmasters? You're familiar with Toastmasters, but
I know
sometimes
it.
you see the speakers that have over prepared but lacking personality. And
Yes.
sometimes you'll see that in the TEDx as well, that it's word for word perfect, but it's like similar to what you said earlier. You could just kind of replace the person, put in another speaker, and you've got the exact same thing. And it's just finding that kind of that you're showing the you into the audience.
Yeah. I think sometimes with those scenarios is that they haven't practiced enough. So do you mean you've got to a point where it's like, I can do all of this without really thinking about it, but it's almost like you've got to get through that bit and on the other side, and that's when your personality can really come through. Either that, or they haven't done enough of the mindset work of feeling like they have something worth saying, that they are expert enough, that they are valuable enough to be saying this to this particular audience, that audience want to listen. If they haven't done that mindset work, they could practice until the end of days, and their personality isn't going to shine through. Because you need to stand on that stage and feel like, I have a right to be here, I've got something interesting to say, and this audience want to hear it. If you're standing there and you don't think hell yes to all three of those things, then the likelihood is, in the pressure of that situation, your personality isn't going to shine through. And that does mean it just loses its edge for the audience. It's not as memorable or sticky as somebody who's totally present to their audience.
And like, I know that you're helping women kind of get in like leadership positions. So you might just touch on that, because I know that it's kind of needed. There's too many men and a man will say that there's too many men in the business world, and it needs to be kind of equaled out.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting one. I think it comes back to this idea of enoughness. So the way that women's brains and men's brains develop from childhood, the way that we use language from childhood is very different. So women their brains are structured in ways that encourage them to collaborate more. We listen in a different way to men. So we hear nuance in sound that men don't hear. And that's not a judgment at all. That's just the way that our brains are structured. So women tend to hear things and see facial expressions, which men don't pick up on. And often that will go, oh, they didn't like that. They didn't like the way I said that. I'm pushing too far. And so they pull back. And again, it's because of this enoughness piece. So they tend to change the way that they hold their bodies. They tend to change the language that they use, and their mindset is a bit fixed on I'm not enough. So they'll be like, well, I'll apply for that job when I've got 5 years experience. I will get that extra qualification here, there, and everywhere before I do X, Y, and Z. I won't put myself forward because I'm not ready for that yet. So there's a lot of perfecting that goes on with women that doesn't go on in the same way as it does with men. So women do hold themselves back from being a bit more visible in their organizations. So the work that we do is helping them become more visible, so saying yes to things, and then when they do say yes, being more credible in that moment. So again, it's that working on that mindset, that body, that breath, that voice, the words that they choose, and the actions that they take around all of that helps raise their visibility.
Excellent. And with the Royal Centre Coach and Drama, like, because I mean, you probably witnessed just from that, but I see that those that study drama tend to be better speakers. Is that something that you've witnessed yourself, you know, actresses and everything? Because they're not, most people, they're just working on the voice for so many years, and then they realize, oh, there's a bit more to this, my hands, my body movement and everything. Whereas when they do the drama, they kind of have that bit and they're conscious of it from the start.
Well, all actors will do about 8 hours of voice work every single week for 3 years of their training. So it's a lot. They spend a lot of time working on their voices. And obviously they're also working on things like text and character and how to get a message across to an audience. So when they come to speak, they've got a huge array of skills that will allow them to convey their message to their particular audience. And what's really interesting is people often say to me, but Emma, you're using theatre practice in your coaching and training, you know, you're using a lot of those skills. And actors are basically lying the entire time, right? They're a character. It's not them. And I always say to people, yes, you're absolutely right. They are a character. What they're not doing is lying. Because if you were watching an actor who was lying, who didn't really believe that they were the character that they're playing, who didn't feel the things that that character is feeling, you would watch it and you go, oh my God, this is awful. This is terrible. I don't believe this. So every actor is always looking for what they call the big T truth. So what is true for me as a human being? What is true for the other human beings in this world that can really make this come alive? So when we're working with clients, we're always saying, what's the big T truth here? What is it you feel about this content that you want to get across to the audience? So we talk about intention. What's your intention to get across to this audience? So you're right, actors have a huge array of skills available to them. But actually, the ones that count when it comes to speaking are all very learnable without having to be a tree swaying in the wind or a melting ice cube or any of that kind of stuff. But yeah, they are incredible skills when they're used really, really well. And when they're used with authenticity, when they're applied in a kind of gimmicky way or a way that is manipulative, we will see straight through that immediately. We've got such a strong antenna for inauthenticity.
Brilliant. And I watched one of the videos that you on your YouTube channel, developing your executive presence, and you were talking about a few things about being authentic and things like that. So you might just kind of touch on that because it was actually very nice.
Yeah, I mean, authenticity is so, so important. And it's one of the things that I think we forget that we can do. And actually, not only is it really important, it's actually one of the things that's going to elevate our presence so much more than probably anything else. So when I'm running my leadership program, about 3 weeks in, so everybody's getting to know each other. There's only 6 women in the group. So they're just getting to know each other. And we do a particular task. And honestly, at the end of this task, they all start looking around the room going, well, she was amazing. And she was amazing. And she was really good at this. And so they're all saying that about each other. And what they then go on to realize is like, but she was so different from her. And hers was so different from the first speech that we heard. And it's at that moment you can almost sit, and I love it because I just sit there very quietly. I just see the penny drop for them all going, oh, I get to be me. And they realize that in that moment that you can be powerful, you can be persuasive, you can use your personality in whatever way is true and authentic for you, and it still gets to land. So I will have people on my programs who are very kind of gregarious, super confident, but want to get better. And I'll have people thinking, I really want to progress in my career. I want to do better. I want to grow my business. I'm not so confident in myself. And yet when they both present, when they both speak, we'll see two very different personalities. And yet we can see the value in both. I loved the way you had quiet authority. I loved the way you could feel the energy rolling off you. So it all gets to work as long as we're doing it authentically and as long as we are doing it with our audience in mind. So what is it our audience needs from us? I think the best way you can be authentic is to think about, what does your audience need from you? So owning who you are, owning your expertise, owning your personality, and then thinking, what is it they need from me? Because if I can give them that, then I'm going to be authentic. I'm really connecting with these other human beings, rather than pretending and putting on a mask and doing what I think they want, which doesn't really work. I had a client a while back, and she worked in a very, stressful industry. And she said, I put on a mask and I swim with sharks every single day of my working life. And I just thought, oh, how tiring, how miserable, how soul destroying to not be yourself every day when you go to work. So yeah, authenticity is absolutely key. The idea of everybody speaking the same or being the same when they go on stage is just an absolute anathema. It just doesn't work.
And I think, I don't know, it's something just through life's journey that you feel that the more authentic, because a lot of the times we tiptoe around because of the fear of being judged or offending. And the more that you are yourself, you'll attract people that actually like what you're about. And the people that don't get you, they'll just move on. And you feel so much better in yourself by not tiptoeing.
Yeah, I mean, I've had many women who've got to the end of my program who've come in and gone, I want to do better in this organization. I want to get promoted. I want to, more people to see me. And then, just after halfway through, they suddenly go, oh, it's not me, it's them. It doesn't matter what I do, I'm never going to fit in this organization because my personality or my drive or my vision doesn't work with what they want. And then they move and they get amazing jobs in organizations that go, oh my God, yes, please come and work for us. You're amazing. So when we learn to be authentic, when we learn to really accept our expertise and to really allow our skills, our natural skills to really shine, that's when we tend to find the right organization to work with, or our businesses suddenly kind of explode because we are being ourselves on our YouTube channel, or we're being ourselves on our podcast, or on your keynote speech, whatever it might be. Because when we're ourselves, that's when we are genuinely going to connect with the content that we're talking about, but also with the audience, and they will see that and they'll want more.
And you mentioned 6 in the class. Is that what you limited to 6? Is that you found that's the sweet spot? Was it something that you played around with and kind of realized I can serve better with 6, or what was the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, so either 1-to-1 or 6. 6 is just it's an amazing number to feel like you're in a group. So getting the practice of standing up and talking to people, because our brain, when we speak to 6 humans, our brain goes, crowd, public speaking. Rather than just talking. So 6 is a deliberate choice because it does stimulate that kind of stress reaction. If you're going to have it, it's going to be 6 people. So we do it for that reason, but also it means that we have a rich conversation. So we have women from 3 or 4 continents at usually on a cohort. So very rich conversation, but it means that everybody gets group coaching and one-to-one coaching. So everybody gets input from everybody else in the group. So very, very valuable. And then also one-to-one input from me. So 6 works incredibly well. We did play around with it for a while, but it's definitely the sweet spot. We do some bigger sessions, but they're less personalized, they're less bespoke. It's more training rather than coaching. So the coaching works at 6 just perfectly.
And so, like when you said internationally, so you're really doing it online as opposed to in person?
Yeah, so we do some in-person workshops, but almost all of our coaching and training is online. So if I think about, at the moment I've got someone in South America, North America, all over UK and Europe in one of my cohorts at the moment. So it allows everybody to meet, to bring their experience from their country, from their life. And we have these incredible conversations, and it's amazing how much of everybody's story is similar across the globe. And also different at the same time. But it means that we can serve women on a global basis. So pre-pandemic, we were geographically limited. So we had to do a program here or a program over there. And so it meant it was much harder to serve women and men all over the world. So now we get to serve people wherever they are. And that's just really exciting to have that global reach.
Brilliant. And with the event business then that you were doing, like, because a lot of people want to actually, that are speakers, want to set up events and do events, and whether they're kind of in the country they're in or going somewhere else. So with the experience that you've got, what are the kind of pros and cons for that? Because some people might kind of not realize the amount of work that's actually needed for creating events.
To run your own event, oi, oi, oi. I would say, unless that's your business, or unless you have an amazing team. So say you wanted to set up a summit. Summits can be incredible, but my goodness, they're a lot of work. So you need to be or have a logistics whiz, right? So events sound exciting. They sound incredibly glamorous. If I go back to my days of running events or having a team, I ran a team of 15 people who ran the events. We spent most of our days looking at spreadsheets, budget spreadsheets, logistic spreadsheets, client spreadsheets, who was going to be where, when, meal spreadsheets. It's not exciting. It is not glamorous, right? So, and then you get to the event and you'll probably spend huge amounts of time crawling around with gaffer tape, sticking wires to this, that, and the other, putting labels on. It's really, really hard work. And then you have the event itself, which is amazing and it's lovely. And it's a really tiny aspect of the whole thing. So if you have that drive, if you have that desire, if you have that team available to help you create a really smooth event, because it's massive, you've got to think about all the things that are going on before, the publicity, the marketing, the sales, the getting people there, the running the event, the aftercare. If you want to do all of that, go for it. Absolutely. It is great fun, but it's hard work. If you don't, then you just want to be getting yourself keynote speeches on events that are already existing to start with. Try that for a while. And if you find you love it, you really love it, then dip your toe in. But if you've never run a big event before, I would hesitate to jump in unless you've got the right skills and the right people to support you, because it's hard work.
And the other thing as well that I don't think people are kind of aware of is you're dealing with different personalities with the speakers, because I've seen some people on stage and the charisma and you go, wow, this person's amazing, and you get to sit down with them later and you go, not that nice a person. And I've heard that a lot of people would be having certain requirements as well that's part of their deal, and I think that dealing with that, because you're dealing with different personalities and you have to kind of adjust for that sucks the energy out of you as well.
You definitely need to be there's a particular personality. So when I was running my events business, like I said, there was 30 people there. We had one girl who was phenomenally brilliant at dealing with speakers. Amazing. She, celebrities, people that nobody had ever heard of. She was incredible at looking after them, making them feel loved, making them sure that all the requirements were met. She was incredible. I would have literally hated that job. It would not have suited my personality at all, but she was incredible at it. So yeah, you do have to be somebody who just finds humanity incredibly interesting in all its facets and be very non-judgmental, because otherwise, you'll get a little eye twitchy before very long. So yeah, I would think very carefully before going into that, for sure.
Okay, perfect. And just finally, because with social media, I'd love to know kind of what you find is serving you best, because I know you've worked on a few different kind of industries as well, but what you're doing now with the coaching and the speaking, what you think is the social media that, I'd love to turn the tap off with social media and no, I don't think anybody likes it, but we have to do it to kind of get the message out. I'm just wondering which ones you find are the better.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I was having a conversation about this the other day. I think for me, it's places where I feel like I can be extremely authentic and I can talk like I'm talking to you now, but just in writing. So for me, the two places that I hang out are LinkedIn, because I feel like this is focused on business. It's focused on scaling entrepreneurs. It's the boardroom. Okay. I feel like it's the boardroom. We're having sensible conversations. That doesn't mean we can't allow our personality out. It doesn't mean we can't laugh about things or post funny things now and then. But I feel like it's business conversation around things that are really valuable for the people who are reading or watching the content there. And the other place I feel really authentic is on YouTube, because I record, 8-minute videos a couple of times a week about a particular topic, so that I'm really trying to give value. So I'm like, I want people to understand this. It's like, if you do this, this is going to happen. If you do that, that's going to happen. So I feel like I can show up as me. But so for me, those are the two places that are really, really authentic. I found Facebook and Instagram more of a kind of playground that I haven't found it's really interesting. I haven't found my voice on Instagram. I'm there, and I and I'm still playing around. I don't know who I am there. And I know that's a really odd thing to say.
I agree. I'm the exact same. I know exactly what you're saying.
And I just think, and I thought, well, maybe I don't know what it is, but I just haven't found my voice. And I'm experimenting, and I keep changing things, and like, that feels a little better, but it's still not right. It doesn't feel like I feel like on LinkedIn, I feel like I could just sit down and I can just speak. I can write a post and it comes out of me and it's easy. Whereas on Instagram, I haven't found that. So for me, LinkedIn, YouTube are definitely where I feel I show up and give the best value.
Brilliant. And
just like you, I would, we would all rather not do that. But it's part of the process. And I feel like people need to get to know you before they can, it's so important. People need to get to like you, to know you and trust you, because they're not going to spend their time, their energy and money with you unless they feel like that. And that's true if you're a speaker or an entrepreneur.
Exactly. And just on your YouTube channel, I feel that your graphics are fantastic. It's something I don't do myself, and I know it would help, because you have, it's consistent, but with the message, and I know that's the way you should do it. But with the 5 podcasts, I know that if I done that would be my job and not be actually interviewing people. But yeah, you do it lovely, and there's some fantastic videos on it. So you might let people know how they can get in contact with you, Emma.
Yeah, so LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me. If you want to read stuff that I'm doing, if you go to YouTube, so it's emmawainer.com, if you want to have a look at what I'm talking about, or you can email me. So it's emma@speakingatwork.co.uk. So those are probably the best ways to get in touch. And just by the way, Roy, I don't do those thumbnails. I have an amazing team who do all that stuff for me, because like you, it's just not my skill base. So I'm good at talking. I'm a real expert in my area, but when it comes to tech, it stays over there, I stay over here, and we have a healthy respect for each other. So have a team.
No, excellent. Yeah, perfect. Listen, thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I'll make sure I put all the links both on the audio and the video. Thank you, Emma.
Amazing. Thank you, Roy. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, so that's all for the Speaking Podcast. As mentioned, you'll find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com, on BitChute and YouTube, and you'll find my coaching along with my 4 other podcasts, meditation, learn Polish, crypto, and awakening on bio.link/podcaster. Be sure to give us a thumbs up, 5-star rating, share with your friends. Until next week, take care.